You both mentioned that your parents were interested in you gaining an accent or learning a particular language, so Portuguese for you, English and French, none of which are African languages, so to speak. What do you think was your parents' reason for wanting that for you? Why weren't they, for instance, interested in you learning another African language, say Kiswahili or Zulu or something else, right? Why was English, French, Portuguese the language they really wanted you to learn, to the point that they were willing to sacrifice your ability to learn your indigenous language?
I feel like they just wanted me and my siblings to have an easier life growing up and have more access to certain things. I guess French and English are more broadly spoken around the world in comparison to Swahili or Zulu.
I believe that it's also the fact that they wanted me to be able to have more opportunities growing up, just for the fact of me speaking fluent Portuguese. And I think it goes a little bit also to how society works back home. The better you show your accent to be, the more well-educated you look.
So it seems to me like there's this interest in what people call social mobility, so opportunities or easier life, right? Can you point to what that might look like? What kinds of opportunities? What sorts of life do you think they envision here?
For my case, I don't think my parents envisioned me living in Nigeria as a grown-up and going through the workforce there. So I think it'll be easier for me to go through the workforce here, and as well as also other opportunities where jobs like when people are fluent in different languages.
So do you know why would they not be interested in you growing up in Nigeria, living in Nigeria, working in Nigeria, having a good life in Nigeria?
Because Nigeria is a third world country.
Third world country.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that, but I feel like because I think they just wanted me to have, or they see the U.S., well, I don't see that, but they see the U.S. and other Western countries as the dream life, heaven, basically, and nothing gets better than that. But
so how does that function? I mean, you use the word opportunity. Like, does that sound similar to the Mozambican context?
My parents do definitely envision me going back home to live there. But I guess that growing up, they did not see me moving out of the country. So there was not really that pressure of me having to learn English. The pressure came more from myself, because I noticed that there are a lot of more job opportunities that I could get in my country just by having English as my second language. But for the case of Portuguese, going back, I don't know, it's all about that thing that they say that first impressions count, that thing of you going, for example, the case of you going to a job interview back at home, and as you are at a job interview, talking to someone, they see that you speak a very good Portuguese, no grammar errors, no accent. The accent in my region is a little bit different from the other accents. No bad accent.
So the question is not just accents, but good and bad accents, right?
Yes.
So there are particular ways that you speak the language, and then that's good, and there are other. It might be grammatically correct, but if
you can misspell some letters.
So I think I'm curious about why Makua is not the respected, valued language when you go for that interview, right? Why aren't people thinking she speaks fluent Makua? My assumption is that this is part of the colonial influence, right?
Because most institutions back home, you go and they speak Portuguese to you.
I'm assuming that you're relating that also to the Nigerian context. That is, the fluency in English sort of marks you out as a more educated person.
Yeah.
Right. Let me get back then to that third world country thing. So do you think that colonial influence has anything to do with why an African society will be called a third world, right? Do you think there is any connection there? And the more broad question is, what makes a place like Nigeria a third world country? Like, what is it that characterizes the third worldness of Nigeria as a country? And I want to say not just Nigeria, but you can say the same thing about other Mozambique or any other African. So what is it that makes such a context a third world?
One of the main reasons is also how Africa is depicted in general in the media as well, from Western countries as well, how they depict Africa to be very, I don't want to say poor, but developing and uncivilized as well.
You mentioned Abuja is a city.
No,
right?
I suffer here more than I suffer back home.
So and I think that's part of what I'm trying to understand. So what is the third worldness or the underdeveloped or developingness part of that entire thing? If one were to say, okay, spend a couple of years in Abuja, spend a couple of years in Washington, D.C. So you mentioned Georgia earlier, right? You lived in Georgia.
Yeah.
So just in those two contexts, what are the dynamics of life in those contexts that would characterize them as so radically different that would warrant the categorization? Because it seems like it's shaping this very consequential choice that parents are making. And it's insightful that you also said this is partly because of the narrative, the portrayal of Africa as a continent
Yeah.
in public media and public conversations.
Shaky power. It's not consistent. It's not consistent water. It's not consistent Wi-Fi and electricity in general and all that type of stuff. So I guess that's the main difference that you see. I don't think it's as bad as it is depicted. Even as I speak, it's not to say I suffer when I go back home. That's premium enjoyment. I actually have a great time and I love when I'm back home, and I feel like I struggle more here.
But I guess it's also because we have been used to all those things that you just mentioned.
So you're saying that people who are not used to it,
And when they go there,
it's not a problem for them.
Yes, it has something very unusual.
Why should we define well-being based on access to electricity and constant water from a tap and so on and so forth? Let's presume that Japan has constant electricity, constant water, and so on and so forth. Why weren't your parents pushing Japanese?
Because they have preconceived notions about Asia as well.
Again, it seems to me like that there might be that narrative.